You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. We're gonna get into today's topic pretty soon, but first and foremost, I want to say Merry Christmas to you guys. This is the week of Christmas, and I hope that you guys have a fabulous, fabulous time with your families, and that this is one of the most memorable years for you, and all for good reason too. Also, if you are Christian like I am, may I also invite you to please take some time and really focus your celebrations on our Savior Jesus Christ as well, since it really does make seasons so much more magical. And it also helps you understand some really, really great things about yourself. So, without further ado, I also have an announcement for you guys. March 12th, 13th, and 14th, I will be speaking at the Art of Expansion. We've got a really great lineup of speakers who are going to be talking about how to really get into business in a way that aligns with your messaging and with your vision and with you. And, I feel like that's a really big piece to really why a lot of you guys are listening is you want to know how to build a business that really feels authentic and aligned with you. Because oftentimes we get into entrepreneurship and we realize that there's something about it that maybe doesn't align. Doesn't mean that entrepreneurship itself doesn't align. It just means that there's something about what we're doing might not align. And so some of you might be listening to this podcast for that reason. Some of you might be listening to the podcast because you want to know how to make money. And we'll be talking about that at the Art of Expansion. Some of you are listening to the podcast because you want to know more about boundaries. Maybe you want to know more about trauma healing. We're going to be talking about all of that in the Art of Expansion, March 12th, 13th, and 14th. We've got, like I said, great, great speakers lined up. And if you go to www.storytellingbyyourdesign.com/Art of Expansion 2026, you can get some really great tickets for you and plus one. And if you message the show, want in on one of these tickets, please let me know because I do have some discount codes for you guys so that way you can also have free tickets to the event. And I have quite a few to be able to give out. So please let me know if that's something that you're interested in. If it is, I can hook you up with some tickets. Okay. All right. But today, let's go ahead and move on into what our topic is, which is actually that healing and creating boundaries is mathematical. And let me explain that for just a little bit. One of the things that I've noticed when helping kids learn math and also when helping people heal trauma is there's actually a lot of similarities between the two. A lot of people think that trauma or healing trauma is emotional and running a business is logical, but in the truth, they're both emotional and logical, and so is mathematical. And math actually deals with emotion and logic, right? And it's not necessarily about being good at life or good at business or good at math or bad at math. Like it's not about those things, but I totally understand like why somebody might think that it is. You know, I look back at when I was a kid growing up thinking that I was bad at math, right? And the truth of the matter is I actually wasn't. It's just I didn't know how to think about it. I didn't know the hows or the whys or the understanding about it. And so a lot of times I'd get stuck on I'm bad at math. I don't understand this. Math is hard, math is difficult. And a lot of you out there might also be thinking the same way, even now, right? That math is hard, math is difficult. I don't like it, right? But we say the same things when we're stuck in trauma. Life is hard, life is difficult. I don't like it. We might say the same thing about relationships. Relationships are hard, relationships are difficult. I don't like relationships. But yet we have to have an understanding of math, relationships, and life in a lot of ways in order to make our businesses grow and also so that way we can, focus on creating the life and the living that we love. So you have to understand that both math and trauma are or like healing trauma, I should say, they're about understanding the patterns, the relationships, the inputs and the outputs, and observation. Just notice what you're noticing. One of the things that, I talk to my students right now about, because I actually do tutor still a few kids in math here and there. And one of the first things I'll tell them is just write down the problem. And before you try to solve it, just notice what you're noticing. Just pay attention. What do you see here? Right? And then start writing down like what you notice. Maybe you notice that this pattern follows the 9 times tables. Maybe you notice that this is all odd and even numbers. Maybe you notice that this is all odd numbers. Maybe you notice this is all even numbers. Uh, what is the pattern, the relationship between the numbers? What do you notice? Right? And we need to do the same thing with our emotions when it comes to money, creation, or healing trauma, because oftentimes we get stuck creating what we say we want to create because of some sort of trauma in the background. Mary Morrissey, she's fabulous. She talks a lot actually about this concept here that when you you say you want something, but you don't achieve it, it's usually because we make a decision that something else is more important than the thing that we want to achieve. And so, if you think, and this is why it's really important to notice what you're noticing. When I have clients that come to me and they're like, I want to create a healthy family in my, like between me and my husband. My husband has been maybe looking at pornography. I feel like he's broken his covenants with me and my family. And I don't know how to navigate my business anymore because I can't focus on it, right? Well, oftentimes we're not able to create or grow our business in those, or she's not able to create or grow the business in those circumstances because she's making uh, the the problem more important than what she says she wants. And that's not a judgment, by the way. I want to be very clear on that. It's something that I think we all do to some degree. One of the things I noticed too about myself, like when I was trying to hit that six-figure business mark, like part of the reason why I didn't for years and years and years is because I made people's stories about money more important than my actual results, right? And I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable, or I was too busy people pleasing, or etc. And we end up doing this a lot when we get like this is kind of how we get in our own way, is we make something else more important than the result that we say we want, right? And sometimes, like to be honest, sometimes that thing is more important. Like I could go out and rob a bank, right? If I want to make $100,000, but I don't want to do it that way. It's more important for me to align with integrity and align with the people that I teach and, help them see the value in what I do than it is for me to go and do something that is completely out of my value system, right? So when we notice like our thoughts and our feelings around our result, the thing that we say that we want, we often can find out like where our stories are and how those stories are impacting us on a physical level, and why maybe sometimes we're not calling in the thing that we say we want. And it can also help us see the equation, see what the solution is, and then we can start putting like step by step by step by step between what is the equation and how to solve it so we can get the correct result, right? Trauma is the same way. We take a look at, and this is why we want to notice what we're noticing. We take a look at, what has happened in our lives, or maybe even what we've been taught in our lives versus what it is that we really want. And we think about like that circumstance as an equation that looks really complicated and really difficult. But in reality, all math works off of the same system. It works the same way. You will never add 2 plus 2 and get something else other than 4. It's predictable. It is an absolutely predictable thing as long as you're understanding the patterns, the relationships, the inputs, the outputs, and just noticing what you notice, right? Then we can take the circumstance and start to bridge the gap between what happened and what it is we actually say we want. We can create the change. So if math once made you feel dumb and business feels really confusing now, it's not because you're broken, or I should even say of business and life, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, your life is your business and your business is your life. They intertwine so much. But if your business and your life feel confusing now and math once made you feel confused, it's not because something's wrong with you, okay? It's because you're not understanding, or maybe even nobody taught you how to understand the why and the how and the patterns behind what it is you're experiencing. So when it comes to being good at math, and we're going to get into how this is trauma healing and business creation in just a second. So, bear with me for a minute. But the best way to be good at math is to not actually memorize answers. It's to understand how, the numbers relate to each other. What are the patterns? How do the patterns repeat themselves? And how just one little change affects the entire equation, right? It requires and rewards curiosity, attention, and a willingness to just slow down and notice what it is that you notice, right? But once we start to involve shame, panic, rushing, like uh, freaking out basically if we don't get the right answer. We have to have the right answer. We have to have the right answer instead of like finding out like what was the step between the equation and the answer we got that maybe we misunderstood, right? Those things cause a trauma around math, okay? And the same thing happens in life when a circumstance that is difficult or hard uh, tends to rise up. We call that a trauma. And when we try to heal from that trauma, it often fails because of the same things, like the same reasons why math becomes difficult. It's because we get into shame, panic, these cycles, right? And we tend to feel like what it is that we're doing or what it is we're trying to solve, this problem that we're trying to solve is so confusing and so difficult. And why on earth do I even have to do this, right? Like, where am I going to apply this in my life? Like, very similar languaging between understanding a mathematical equation and understanding our life. But the truth of the matter is our lives are based upon the same principles: observation, notice what it is you're noticing, relation, like how does what you're experiencing relate to maybe what it is you want to create, maybe what it is you want to achieve. How where's the relationship? Um, is it something in a particular relationship that is causing the distress, right? And it also requires attention to some of the detail, right? Um, and attention to the steps between point A to point B, where the problem lies and what is the solution, right? And this is why it's really important when we get into success, it's because we start to understand patterns, we start to ask better questions, we start being present long enough just to notice what we're noticing and to start getting curious about what we can do next. So let's define what trauma actually is, okay? Because trauma is not the event, it is the patterns that are created after the event. It is the thoughts that we have about the event. Now, you can have something happen to you, and the entire world would agree that that's traumatic. Okay. This isn't to downplay your experience at all. But what I am saying is we can choose what we think. You've probably heard me say that, I've gone through one of the biggest traumas in my life, even after I started understanding like all these traumas, or all how to heal from trauma, I should say. And this trauma was so big that it did affect my entire family, and we're talking extended family too. It was kind of a big deal. And if I were to get into detail, the rest of you would also most likely agree that that was a very traumatic experience. And it'd probably pull at your heartstrings, right? But one of the reasons why it didn't land so hard on us as a family was because of this process that we did decide what we were going to think. We decided how we were going to show up. We decided who we are going to be. And oftentimes those boundaries and those decisions and those thoughts create an environment for us that allows us to continue thriving even after some sort of traumatic event happens. And we can literally have trauma in the same areas that we create boundaries in. Trauma can be created in listening. It can be created by somebody speaking to us. I mean, bullying is often verbal, right? It can also be physical, sexual, energetic. It can be a time trauma, it can be a money trauma. But these are also the same seven areas in which we create boundaries, where we become something in each one of those areas. And what we choose to become can help us rise above the difficulty, or it can keep us at the same level or below. And so this is why I say, like, it's really important to understand, your formulas. And the formula for healing is going from your circumstance to your thought, to your feeling, to your action, and then the result that you want. And similar to like healing, or not healing, but solving a math problem, there's a certain set of steps that you have to take in order to whittle that problem down enough to get to an answer, to get to the place that the result that we want, right? And a lot of times we don't focus on our thoughts or our feelings. We just sit there and try to change the action and hope that something sticks, but without actually changing the thoughts, the feelings first, the actions don't yield the correct results because the thoughts and the feelings haven't changed. So let me explain this for an example. Thinking about our relationships, because our relationships really do have a major impact on our success or our failure. They do. And sometimes we might have a relationship, somebody that we love, that we have to create distance from. But we can create distance in two ways. We can create distance out of love, or we can create distance out of vengeance. Somebody can do something that's completely and utterly inappropriate. Maybe they did it on purpose, or maybe they have a mindset that isn't aligning with yours, right? And maybe they've done something that hurt you. And you could say, I'm never talking to that person again. I'm never going to associate with them again. And I'm done. I am done with them. But that's going to get you a certain result. It's the same action as, maybe distancing with love. You could look at someone and say, you know what? I'm really hearing them. Their behavior is saying that something about me in their life is making them uncomfortable. I don't want to be the person that makes them uncomfortable. Apparently, my presence is making them confused. And I'm not going to change who I am for their benefit because that's not going to help them either. It's not going to help me. So I'm going to give them distance because I want them to grow. I want them to be happy or at least at their happiest. And it seems like my presence doesn't do that, right? And we can do that. But even though the action is the same, creating distance, maybe we block them on our phones. The results are going to be different, not because the actions were the same, it was because the thoughts and the feelings behind the action were different. So, for an example, like if we create distance out of anger and frustration, we tend to perpetuate more anger and frustration. Maybe we talk negatively about that person in our lives and around other people, and that might create weak trust with someone that you really need to have a relationship with, or you do want a relationship with. It creates weak trust in yourself because you're consistently feeling angry. Because anger isn't meant to necessarily be there on a chronic level. Anger is there to teach you about your boundaries, about who you are, who you choose to be. It's a message that you are sending to yourself. It's a message that your subconscious sends to your conscious brain. And when we don't listen to it and we just take immediate action out of frustration and anger, we haven't actually, worked through the emotion enough to be able to make a wise decision. However, when we create distance out of love, because we respect ourselves, we love ourselves, and we know that we don't need the the toxicity, but also that person, whenever they show up in our lives, is toxic. The best thing for both parties would be to create distance because you love yourself and respect yourself, and you love them and respect them. That creates peace and not consistent angst. And so it's not the action, even though the action is the same, is the thoughts and the feelings behind the actions that create the result. And it's the same thing when you look at equations or how math shows up, right? Math is going to work a certain way no matter what. And you might have constants and you might have variables. But some of the things that we can be constant in are our unbreakable boundaries. Like, I choose to be compassionate to myself no matter what. I choose to show up with respect no matter what because I like myself as a respectful person, right? Like, what are our unbreakable boundaries? The things that, when life says that we fall back on and we do not change. We will not change for a person. We will not change that for life. And it's because those unbreakable boundaries only bless and benefit ourselves and the people around us. That's the constant. But the variable in the situation is sometimes the way life and people show up. That's not always constant. But how we take a look at the situation creates the answer, creates the result. So let's talk about notice what you need to notice, right? There's three data points, three pieces that are constant that you really need to pay attention to. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your actions? Thoughts, what story shows up automatically when I think about this situation? And what emotion lives inside my chest, inside my gut, inside my body? What emotion keeps showing up? And what is that emotion trying to tell me? And once we're clear on that, that'll give us an ability to take decisive action, action that will lead us to a result that we say that we want. We don't argue with numbers in accounting, we simply observe them. Healing asks for the same type of maturity. Simply observe what is happening. Simply notice what you're noticing. Why are you experiencing anger? Why are you experiencing the frustration? And also, like, why are we experiencing joy? Why are we experiencing pleasure? Failure and success have within them a set of emotions. Whenever we fail, oftentimes we do feel very sad, frustrated, angry, sometimes lonely. But when we're in success, we feel joy, peace, happiness, excitement. We want to notice what we're noticing because we can either continue that pattern and do the thing again, or we can fail and learn like what we need to change. What is the variable? What is the pattern? What is the interrupt? Did we make the mistake? Right? So we can actually lead to the answer or the result that we do want. Okay. So some ways that you might see trauma show up in your business, right? Low sales. Well, again, we just want to notice what we're noticing. If we're having low sales, if we're not making the money that we want, well, that's simply data. It doesn't necessarily mean it's failure, but we can honor what we're feeling and listen to those emotions. Why are these emotions showing up? Well, because I'm not making money. I've got bills I have to pay. Okay, I can understand that. Those are stressful situations, especially when we have time limits on the bills and things that we have to pay for. What can we do? What else could we think about? Could we create something that people might like, people might love? Could we sell something? And how would we feel about selling that thing? We have to problem solve, but problem solving means that we have to change the pictures in our brain, and the pictures in our brain change the thoughts. If we consistently play the vision of failure in our brain, that is the reality often that we continue to live. Inconsistency is a pattern. It's not necessarily laziness. It's actually a trauma. It's when we're inconsistent, that's us often saying like this is the thing that we say that we want, but we make something else more important than that thing. And burnout can be a misaligned equation. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's weakness. It means that just something isn't aligned with what it is we're doing. We're not being able to be authentic to ourselves. Hence another reason, by the way, guys, to come to the art of expansion, because we do teach you how to be authentic. Okay. So you don't have to destroy patterns, but you do have to interrupt them. If you think about math and equations, sometimes the pattern interrupt is what gets us the answer or puts us on the path towards the answer. So some things that you might want to interrupt, you might say, like, what else could be true? That could be a thought interrupt, an emotional interrupt is how can I stay in this emotion for a second? What is the emotion trying to tell me? What is it trying to teach me? And be open to truth. And our action interrupt is what is one small thing I can do today that will make a difference tomorrow? Okay. So those are some things you might want to think about. And remember that, math is very much the same thing. Like once you change just that one little variable, the entire outcome changes. Small, consistent shifts beat dramatic overhauls. So healing isn't necessarily emotional chaos. As a matter of fact, that'll keep you in trauma, but it's regulated curiosity applied consistently. And that is true in any one of the 7 areas that trauma can show up. So let's bring boundaries into this discussion really quickly. Also, realize that boundaries also define your inputs and your outputs. Okay? They keep your system sustainable, predictable, and working consistently. They prevent leakage because, like I said, they're your constants. You have your variables, you have your constants. You get to be constant with yourself. And when we're constant with ourselves, it means that we do have a pattern, we do have a system in place that is going to work for us because that's who we are. Remember that boundaries are about showing up authentically for yourself, really loving that person completely and not allowing somebody else to come in and tell you how you should live your life. Time boundaries create consistent creation. So remember that boundaries don't limit your growth. They stabilize the system so growth can occur. Um, so again, if you guys want more information, you guys would like to uh, understand your boundaries in a more consistent, beautiful way, help you understand like who you are, be proud of that person, and how to act in alignment with that person, please feel free to come and join the Unbreakable Boundary. You're going to get 30 days of content there to help you grow into the person that you want to be. And also, like I said, come and chat with me at the Art of Expansion, because we're going to be talking about the Unbreakable Boundary there and how the Unbreakable Boundary is something that already lies inside of you. It's just something that we get to awaken so that way you can have the result, whether it be in healing your trauma or creating the life and the business that you love. Whatever it is that you say that you want, it starts in being who you say you want to be. So come and join the Unbreakable Boundary. Come see me at the Art of Expansion. That's March 12th, 13th, and 14th. And until next time, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the Send Us a Text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.